Thank you. Workplace violence. Where can bad things happen? And the reason I bring it up, Mr. Roz and I did a presentation at a long-term care facility in the northern part of Bergen last year. And the director walked out, she said, this could never happen here. It was an active shooter training. Where can bad things happen, ladies and gentlemen? Anywhere. The most bucolic, serene locations in our nation. And we're going to talk about that. And who's the most important person in any emergency? Who is it?
Me.
You are. Why? Because if you can't take care of yourself, can you help others?
No.
That's important, especially people who oversee children every day. Children know when you're scared. They know fear. And we're going to talk about some things you can do. So, there's a great book out there. I often talk about Gavin de Becker. Anybody ever read the book, The Gift of Fear? How is it, ma'am? What do you think?
I give it to every girl I know who's going to college.
Phenomenal book about trusting your intuition. Gavin de Becker had a very volatile childhood. He's a threat protection specialist now. If you remember Madonna in the 80s, he saved her life when she was being stalked. And he tells people, trust your intuition. And what's better for the human condition, fear or panic? What do you think? Fear. Fear is a natural instinct, right? Natural survival instinct, a survival tool. And one of the things that we stress constantly, we have a whole nother presentation on situational awareness. What is that? What is situational awareness? Know where you are, right? Know where you are. And what do cell phones tend to do to our situational awareness? They diminish it. I saw it the other day in the subway. People like this. If I'm somebody who want to pick somebody's pocket or maybe steal something, I'm going to look for that type of person, right? So situational awareness, know your surroundings, know where you are at all times. That's so critical. That saves your life. Panic is bad. Is panic contagious? Yes. Definitely is. We saw impromptu leadership during 9/11. When the North Tower and the South Tower, right before they went down. And people that are not normally leaders in their organizations, whether it's emergency services, FDNY, Port Authority, NYPD, or JP Morgan, Aon, other companies that were there. People followed people that did not panic and make good decisions. So remember that. It evokes a stress reaction. What happens to our body under stress, everybody? What happens to our vision? You get tunnel vision, right? Because you're focused just on that threat. But what we learn from law enforcement and military operations, that threat can be also beyond that tunnel vision. What happens to our hearing? You get auditory exclusion. It means you may not hear an emergency warning. And what happens to our fine motor skills under stress? They freeze up. They freeze up. So we're going to talk about this. I want everybody to put your thumb up to your mouth. And I learned this from Lieutenant Colonel Grossman. You've seen him, right, Sarge? And he talks about blowing the candle out. You ready? 3-second blow out of that candle. What did that just do if you're under stress? Whether you're going for an MRI, you open up a Kohl's bill, like I normally do after my daughter goes, or you're going into a possible hostile environment. Relaxes you a little. Remember, stress hurts decision making. Obstacles to survival panic. Does everybody agree with that? We had an active shooter. I don't know if you're at that one, Sergeant, Garden State Plaza, right? How many law enforcement officers were there? Over 500 law enforcement officers. Young man comes in, has a history of mental illness, walked in with a gun. People were posting it on Facebook. Somebody actually called the police finally. Obstacle to survival. Remember, it can happen anywhere. It can happen anywhere. So, if possible, try and remain calm. How many people here are teachers, oversee kids every day? What ages?
0 to 18.
Yeah. You have peanuts, little ones to adults, regardless of the age. Children know if you panic. They know it. So today's purpose, any situation poses an immediate risk to health, life, or property that calls for immediate action. The bottom line is everybody wants to go home. Yourself, self-care, buddy care, stranger care. And we have a lot of strangers here, right? A lot of people that we don't know. So we have random acts of kindness. We have to take care of our visitors, as you know, and do every day. So how do we identify emergencies? You see someone actively harming or trying to harm another person, you will see blue lights activated. We're going to get into depth about those blue lights in the following slides. Is it normal to hear explosions in a building or shots fired? No, and the reason I bring this up is the FBI was doing training, and a lot of people had the OMG syndrome if they heard shots in a building, Washington Navy Yard, Virginia Tech. Oh my God, that can't be happening here. It's not normal to hear fireworks in a building. Does everybody agree? So it can happen. Screaming, an announcement through the PA system, or somebody telling you there's an active shooter in the front lobby or on the second floor. Is it normal to smell smoke or something that smells like fireworks? No, it's not. No, it's not. And you report it. Remember, if you see something, say something. If you know something, say something. That is so critical. When we talk about lockdown, we'll talk about who can call for a lockdown. And I'm going to throw it out there right now. Who can call for a lockdown in any organization? Anybody, if you see the threat. For years, we had a banter with a lot of school superintendents. No, no, no. And Sergeant remembers, it has to be the school superintendent. It has to be the principal. Negative. I said, ma'am, negative. Sir, negative. If you see a threat, whether it's the first day employee or the 35-year employee, you have an obligation to tell people. So types of incidents. What's going on out in the Middle East, can that migrate here? There are threats out there, right? Nobody lives in a fog. Everybody has their head on the news. We know what happened Saturday. Can we be a target here? Absolutely. Active shooters, stabbing, improvised explosives. What just happened in Melbourne, Australia? What just happened down there? Stabbing, right? In a mall. It can happen anywhere. Homemade bombs, improvised explosive devices. One of the things that I've learned when I was in Israel, a bomb could be put anywhere. Watermelons, guitar cases, babies' diapers. A bomb could be anything. Does everybody agree with that? It could be anywhere. Violent behavior. Can a bad domestic situation at home migrate to the JCC workplace or recreational venue? What do you think? Yeah, domestic violence. 2 police officers just shot up in Syracuse. I believe one passed, Sarge, or 2 passed? One passed. Domestic violence. Does it have to be a terrorist event? It can happen anywhere. You want to tell somebody. It could be a knife, a bat, a chair. We always get grief sometimes from some of our constituents here when we tell people you can't park in the horseshoe, right? Tenafly PD will tell you, right? That's one of the reasons, in addition to fire suppression operations, vehicular assault and ramming, right? What happened West Side Highway, Halloween, about 5 years ago? Wonderful young man from New Milford, a victim of vehicular assault. That's why every time now you go to a street fair or a public fair or venue, what do you see now? Blocking streets. Public Works, heavy equipment. So that's why we tell you to do that. We ask you to do that. Hostage situation. We saw what happened in Texas at the shul. And it resulted in them distracting and attacking the shooter and then fleeing. Fire hazmat. One of the things we do well in this country since we're little children is do what? Stop, drop, and roll, right? You tell any kid, what do you do if your clothes are on fire? Stop, drop, and roll. In a hazmat situation, which means what? A chemical that can harm human beings. And if there's an emergency situation in a neighboring facility, maybe in the Greek church or maybe in another facility that's contiguous to Tenafly or 2 towns away, we may want to take some type of protective actions as well. So why would they attack us? What do you think? The first bullet there. Is that a reality? Absolutely. We had a rash of bomb threats sent through email a couple of years ago, telephonically. It can happen. It can happen. That's where your vigilance is critical. If you see a car that doesn't belong, you're not used to a car that hasn't been there, or somebody that's watching, call the PD. And I'm going to reiterate, sergeants, anybody ever bothering the PD when they call and see something?
Never ever. Call. If you see something, call. We'll be there.
And I'll tell you, the response time is less than a minute to 2 minutes. We're fortunate here. We have a cadre of armed security personnel who are retired police officers. So you're in good hands here. Disgruntled employee, does this happen? Feels angry at how they are being treated by a supervisor or coworker. It happens everywhere. The post office had to revamp their whole human relations interaction protocols years ago. That term, going postal, maybe I'm dating myself. Have you ever heard that? We had a lot of shootings in the post office. Oklahoma City, There was one in Ridgewood. Joe Harris was the shooter, took hostages because they were treating employees very badly. That was one of the suggested reasons. I talked about domestic violence. What about mental illness? That can happen. But regardless of the precursor to the attack, how you respond stays the same. We're going to talk about that. So, some protective actions we can do. Alerting, notification. We'll talk about getting information out there. That's important. Let people know there's a threat there. What's the threat? What type of threat is it? And where's it impacting? Sheltering in place. We'll talk about that. Lockdown. For our educators, I know you have to do a security drill once a month. Lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. Evacuation. What's our primary evacuation point here, ladies and gentlemen? Great Church. If that's compromised, we'll work with security and Tenafly PD to find another location. And a lot of schools and a lot of organizations shelter in place when there's a medical emergency on the facility. Why? I don't want little kids seeing maybe medics doing compressions on somebody that's coding out or having cardiac arrest or that's bleeding. Plus, we don't want people in the common areas when we have emergency services coming. That's critical as well.
So I was lucky enough, I told you before that I used to do security up here quite often before Be Secure kind of took it over full time. I was lucky enough to be here when the first bomb threat came in, a number of years ago now. And 6 years ago? Okay, 6 years ago, thank you. So we really took it as there might be a bomb in this facility because it was a younger girl, I remember, the call got transferred up the side in. She took the phone call. She was probably late teens, early 20s. And by all accounts, from what she said, it was a human voice on the phone. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She was 100% sure it was a human voice. It didn't sound like computerized. The number came from inside of the facility. We end up finding out later on that obviously they spoofed the number, but it came from inside here. But we learned from it, right? Because what we did at the time is we call it dump, right? We got everyone out of the facility. We dumped the entire facility, had everyone evacuate. What we learned from it is that evacuation route, we were hustling, as the Tenafly Police Department, we're hustling to get up here to clear that route first, right? Because we want to have whatever route we're sending people down cleared before we send people down it, just in case there actually is something going on and there's not something else out there that people know that this is the route. So we learned from that. So what also came about from all these bomb threats that we were getting, not only here, but high schools in Bergen County, was now we do threat assessments, right? We check each room from floor to ceiling. We try to get the call. Is anybody familiar with the bomb threat checklist?
We have that coming up later on.
Up? All right,
yes, sir.
I'm jumping ahead of myself. I apologize. So there's actually a checklist, right? The number it came from. Does it sound like computerized voice? So on and so forth. And if you can keep the person on the phone, trust me, the stories become more and more outlandish.
It's right there,
that's
sir.
What,
they all got a copy.
yeah, this is it right here. So that's what actually happens. We had one come into us. They said that they were holding a family hostage at a two-family house in town. They knew where the house was. It's everything you get off of Google Maps or whatever if you just type it in, right? They knew where the house was. They knew everything. And the more and more I kept them on the phone, I actually kept the person on the phone for almost an hour. They kept telling me, oh, well, I want the Navy SEALs to come and get me. I want this one. Oh, I have bombs. I have grenades. It just started getting crazy about what he was telling me. It ended up being that the second floor of the house was actually vacant. And he was, we think, trying to get back at the person who used to live there, another school-age child, but we never were able to tie it back to anyone in particular. But if whoever answers phones in here, is there anyone who actually answers phones in here? If you ever get one of these types of calls, you might not be able to, right? They might just hang up on you. But if you can, just keep them on the phone. Just try to keep asking them questions. How did you get in the facility? Where in the facility? You just keep asking them whatever you can. And if they respond to you, just build off of their answers.
Thank you, Sarge. There's a lot of scams out there, a lot of fraud, swatting. Real quick personal story. My mom, when she was alive, God rest her soul, my son was a little bit of a spaghetti when he was like 15. And my mom gets a call. We have your grandson hostage. We have your grandson hostage. You got to give us $5,000. She goes, who do you have hostage? Your grandson, keep him. She said, right? Good luck, right? And she actually said he's a schmagegi, right? If you don't know what that is, it's an old term. So, but there's a lot of charlatans out there. So, like the sergeant said, when you get those threats on the phone, blow that candle out. Don't panic, and keep them on the line as long as you can. Alert. When present or imminent dangers are observed, alert as many people as possible using plain and specific language. This can be done by many methods: PA system, phone, radio. How many people here use a radio? What happens when everybody pushes the button at the same time? Right? You bleed each other out. Sarge, can you guys monitor their frequency?
No, only if we have the radios.
Oh, okay, only if you have the radios. When you use a radio, you want to keep the radio traffic transmission concise, critical information only. Sarge can tell you, we have some people that utilize a radio, they think they're DJs. Get off the radio. Critical, important information only. Where's the threat? How many people are hurt? Why? Because you're circumventing critical information from getting out there. Yelling, letting people know in a loud, concise voice. Blow that candle out. There's a shooter in the front building. The objective should be a conveyance of information. Information should always be clear and direct. Communicate the whereabouts or direction if moving of the threat or hazard. For years, people say, oh, you don't want to let the perpetrator, the actor's location be known. That's not true. If there's a shooter in the main lobby, I want everybody to know where that threat is. That's not hot stove theory. There's a hot stove there. There's a fire. I want people to know the threat's there. Why? They can go to another location. Now, Allison or Chris, 1610, if you could just a little bit about that, to page people on a house phone, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You can pick up any landline here and dial 1610 and you will page the entire building immediately. It also should be on a sticker on every single person's phone. If you do not have that, please email me or text me.
Thank you.
And a little bit about when I like to carry a whistle, and real loud. If I do a whistle 3 times, is that normal to hear in a building? Unless you're coaching basketball. I like a whistle, right? They're cheap, they're inexpensive, good to have. We have a building collapse, and one of the things we learned from Oklahoma City from 9/11, when people are trapped under debris, what happens to your vocal cords? I'm here, right? Dogs have I love dogs. But Sarge will tell you, we can only work dogs for 12 hours. They get tired, they're adorable, right? They will go until they drop. So a dog, a human being, has a better chance of hearing a whistle than it does a raspy voice. A PA announcement from the office, radio communication. Remember, concise, critical information. The blue lights, we're going to go over that in depth in a few when we show you pictures of some of the panic lights. Verbal communication, that's important. What if somebody only speaks Hebrew? What do you do? If you don't speak Hebrew? Or if they only speak Spanish or Mandarin? Yeah, follow me, okay? And that happens. Question, do we have to dial a prefix before we dial 911 here? Allison, I don't know.
No.
That's a critical thing. Some organizations, some schools, you have to dial an 8 or a 9 before you dial 911. And what happens under stress? Yeah, know where you are, know your location. Which way is north, south, east, and west, everybody in the building? Which way is north? I always tell people to know that. Know that. Why? Something goes south, something goes bad. You're in the Garden State Plaza or in Paramus Park. Remember, the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. You can tell, listen, I'm in the north end of the JCC. The shooter's in the south end. It'll help responders get to the threat. Text and email, is that a capability that we have here with IT? I don't know.
I don't think so.
Not yet. I know that there was something that we were being looked at. There are outside, you have a question, ma'am? There are outside PA systems now, correct? On the athletic fields, there are PA systems. That was something when I started working here in 2013, there was no PA capability. And we had the Maccabi games here back in the mid-90s, Sarge? And there was one before that. Oh, well, 2003? Okay, that's when I worked. I remember the FBI was up here, And I was with the county police at the time. The FBI said the most vulnerable area of attack is what? The north part of the property, because there's no force protection. I remember the agent told us that. His name was Ralph Phillips. He was on their hostage rescue team. He goes, I want to hit this place, and I'm coming in through the woods. So we had a lot of people here at the Maccabi. Everybody familiar with the Maccabi games? They still do them? Yes. Excellent, excellent. And remember, no code words. And I can tell you, this goes back to emergency services, unless it's for operational security issues. The sergeant pulls over somebody wanted for murder. You don't want somebody on the other line on the radio saying, yeah, that person's wanted for murder. No code words. For instance, hospital use code silver. What's code silver in a hospital? Means it's a violent action. What's code silver when you're driving on 17? Yeah, I'm one. Believe me, I know, but you see somebody that may be lost, right? No code words. Active shooter. For years, they would say code red, code blue. What happens to that first weak employee under stress? Oh my God, is that a red? Is it a blue? What is it? No. Plain language, plain, clear and simple language to describe the situation. No code words. That is so important to remember that. Sarge, I'm going to please, okay, this was a slide that Orrin put together, but we know our address, 311, right? 411. Gotcha, 411. Sarge, if you could talk about 911.
Yeah, look, we all know how to use 911. I'm not going to go crazy about how to use 911. The most important thing is obviously state the fact of what's going on, right? No matter what it is, right? I need an ambulance to the JCC in the athletic wing. Someone fell off the treadmill and they busted their head open and have a huge laceration. They're bleeding all over the place. Okay, where are you? 411 East Clinton Avenue to JCC in Tenafly. The reason why it's so important is the way 911 works, right? We are not a quote-unquote 911 center. So what a 911 center means is if you picked up a landline here in the JCC and called 911, if we were a 911 center, the call would come directly to us, but we are not. So what happens when you pick up a landline here at the JCC, the call is more than likely going to Paramus. With cell phone calls, those are more than likely going to the county. So those are either going up to Mahwah or Dumont. Mahwah handles most of them, right? It's Bergen County Communications. They handle most of the cell phone 911 calls, and the same thing's gonna happen. If someone's making all these phone calls to 911 from a cell phone, now they're gonna get bounced to somewhere else. And with our proximity to somewhere else, one of the largest 911 centers that could handle massive amount of calls, they're gonna get bounced across the river. And now New York is gonna be getting 911 calls about whatever that's happening at the JCC. So if whoever's making that call is not saying, hey, I'm at 411 East Clinton Avenue in Tenafly, the JCC, they might be thinking it's some JCC in Manhattan, that something's going on. And now they're starting their emergency services down there when there's absolutely nothing going on. Now look, if there was a violent encounter here at the JCC, do I think that New York would probably send their emergency services there anyway? Probably. Just like if there was something there, we would be here, right? So it's just very important to know how the system works and to just always remember specific where it is in the building and the actual address, right? If you're, like I said, if it's one 911 call because it's a crash or an ambulance request, and you just say, hey, I'm at the JCC in Tenafly, they're gonna know. Paramus is gonna know, just send it, right? But if you happen to get bounced somewhere else, you might have a brand new 911 operator in New York City saying, Tena who? What are you talking about? And they just hear JCC, and then now we have everyone rolling there. All right?
Thank you, Sarge. Sarge talked about don't hanging up. LAPD had a great public service announcement video they did on domestic violence. I don't know if you've seen it. It's out there. Woman's being critically assaulted in her home by a significant other. And she calls 911 and asks for a pepperoni pie because she told did you see that, ma'am? Phenomenal video. Tells the offender, I'm going to get food for us, try and calm him down, de-escalate him a little. Dispatcher goes, ma'am, this is 911. What's your emergency? I need a 911. I need a pepperoni pie as soon as possible. The astute, you saw that, right, Sarge? The astute public safety telecommunicator, the dispatcher, these men and women save lives all throughout the country every day. He says to her, is he still there? Is he armed? Yes, please, extra pepperoni. So remember, that's why we don't hang up. Don't hang up. That is so critical, like the Sarge said that. And let them hang up on you, but don't hang up on them. Shelter in place may be declared when something is happening around the JCC, external threat, and authorities don't want anyone outside until it is safe. What about wildlife? We've had it up here, bears, right? Coyotes. I was working one day here on a Sunday, and there was something that happened, and we were on heightened threat. Tenafly PD was still here, Officer Yankowski, and I'm walking in the back, and somebody from the gym upstairs said, I see people dressed in camouflage walking through the woods. I'm like, whoa, okay. So I go out there, and it's deer. I mean, but they look like people, the deer. Believe it or not, the deer, there was such dense brush and bush, the deer actually looked, they were moving like people. You couldn't make out they were animals. So Officer Yankowski comes out, we're checking, but we put everybody on shelter in place until we can verify that everything was safe. It could be a suspicious person or vehicle, hazardous material, or any kind of threat that might harm people. What about severe weather? We want a shelter in place? If we have kids out on the athletic field and people out there at the pool, definitely, definitely. We get straight line winds with significant lightning, we want a shelter in place. So in other words, unless notified otherwise, shelter in place means stay where you are, and if possible, stay inside a room. Do we let parents come in during shelter in place? Basic security in the facility, what do we do? No, we're staying inside. Deliveries, they're on hold. Visitors, on hold. There's no need for a lockdown, but no one is allowed to leave the building without approval of law enforcement and security. Obviously, if there's a medical emergency, we're going to let people go. Shelter in place will be announced over the PA radio or by activating blue lights and pull stations. Remember, shelter in place may escalate to a lockdown or may go back to normal if no threat is found. And going back to normal operations after shelter in place can be done over the PA system by the person in charge of the facility for that day, the officer of the day. And we'll talk about how that's different during a lockdown. Now I'm going to ask Allison, you could talk about the locations of the blue lights and how to activate them, please.
Yeah, absolutely. We just had a huge upgrade of our blue lights, so you can see a blue light from any single hallway in this building. There's one everywhere visible. You can see on your sheet, it tells you exactly where the panic buttons are. Front desk, courtesy desk, first floor fitness center, room wing, berry wing, second floor main desk, mirror tub, and the camp building also. Don't test them, please. If you pull it, which you reach in and you pull toward yourself, it will immediately activate the police. So please don't test it, although they'll peek, just don't touch it.
And they go right to the PD, correct, ma'am?
Yep, exactly.
And that's great, because a lot of facilities, I've seen it in other facilities, entertainment venues, recreational venues, when you hit their blue light panic button, it goes to a central station, an alarm company, and then it's incumbent upon the alarm company to then notify local law enforcement. So that's fantastic, it goes right to Tenafly. This is how they're operated, right? You would pull the switch. Active shooter, as we know, first of all, the United States has more active shooter incidents than any other country in the world. And the FBI did a 10-year open source study, if you go to fbi.gov, and they look for reasons. Why? Why the United States? Right? Every time you see Lester Holt or a special report, you either think what? It's an active shooter, and we know maybe it's something else critical going on over in Israel. But more active shooters than any other country in the world. That's pretty sad. Is it access to firearms? Is it mental illness? Is it social isolation because of the internet? Right? They don't know. But we can do things. We can empower ourselves. One or more suspects who participate in a random or systematic shooting spree demonstrating their intent to continuously harm others, their overriding objective is that of mass murder. Threat of situation is ongoing. There's immediate risk of death and injury. There's little or no time for proper planning and requires law enforcement to take immediate action. That's why we do drills. Sarge, what's your primary mission? You get a report of gunfire here.
Stop the shooter. That's it. We're changing somewhat because, for years and years it's been, step over the wounded and get to the shooter. With the number of officers we'll probably have here, they're calling it point of care now. I don't know if Barry, if you heard about this, they're starting.
The Rescue Task Force?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It's a point of care at Rescue Task Force, and it's basically empowering us to now throw a tourniquet on someone if they have, you know, an arm that got a round through it or a leg, just to stop the bleeding as we're continuing on. They just found that quick medical intervention will save lives rather than us just stepping over. But short of that, we're not stopping to really talk to people. We're going on to stop the shooter. That's what our main objective is.
Thank you, Sergeant. That's why it's critical when you do get offered the CPR training, the stop the bleed training, that you take it. And chances are you're likely to use the stop the bleed training more at your house than you are at work. Cutting yourself cooking, or a dish that broke in the sink, but it saves lives. And how do we learn that tourniquets save lives? Back in the 70s, I remember they took tourniquets started to go away. Oh, they're dangerous. People lose limbs. Iraq, Afghanistan, a lot of our personnel had traumatic amputations because of IEDs. Tourniquets were applied. They saved lives. They didn't bleed out. They saved lives. So like the Sarge said, they're going to come here. They're going to go right to the threat. And they're also going to do the best they can to save life. Once again, police need good intelligence, good information when they come here. Let security know. Maybe security was compromised. We saw where that security officer was shot up in Buffalo as well, who was a retired police officer. We depended on people in the supermarket to do. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Active shooter goes into a supermarket up in Buffalo, people going about their day, shopping, getting their food, start shooting everybody. Security officer intervenes, retired Buffalo PD officer, gets shot and dies. We relied on the patrons of the supermarket to let law enforcement know what everything in the threat was. Sometimes they develop in a hostage situation. Upon the arrival of law enforcement, Sergeant is one of our best negotiators in the county, but that's not the primary objective. Like the Sergeant said, it is to get that threat neutralized. So Orrin kept up on this. We used to put every active shooter. And the Sergeant, when we first started doing this, the Sergeant and I, we put every active shooter incident in the country on slides. 2 slides, 3 slides, 4 slides. We ran out of slides. The slides were bigger than the presentation of active shooters. 108 mass shooting incidents since 1/1/24. Is that a sin or what? It's a sin. United States of America. 108 mass shooting incidents. Everybody knows what happened in Uvalde, right? What didn't happen in Uvalde? Highland Park, Illinois, the parade shooting, wonderful celebration. People that bring their children there, their grandkids. You know, we have 4th of July coming up, Memorial Day, a celebration, a parade shooting. We know what happened in Congregation Beth Israel Synagogue, the hostage situation. And Rabbi took charge, so the parishioners. Remember, you're not alone when something happens. Work together as a team. Parkland, Florida, Stoneman Douglas High School. And that was an anomaly, right? So as the shooter was caught, the shooter actually assimilated into the crowd with the other students and was caught two jurisdictions away. We know what happened in Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. Chabad of Poway, California. Las Vegas Mandalay Bay Hotel. That's a critical incident when it comes to emergency medical care. If you looked at that video, the news footage on that, majority of patrons at the concert had their shirts off. Why? They were utilizing their garment as impromptu, improvised tourniquets. Is everybody here taking the Stop the Bleed training? What do you think about it? It's free, it's online, Stop the Bleed. And there are people that come out and will teach you real simple, high and tight. You have 2 brachial arteries, 2 femoral arteries, high and tight with the tourniquet, and how to stop bleeding in other parts of the body. However, that also changed how housekeeping in Las Vegas will not let you put up do not disturb sign for more than a day. For more than a day, because what was that moron doing? He was stockpiling weapons in golf bags and set up a sniper's nest. The Jersey City Kosher Supermarket in 2019, Detective Joseph Seals, Jersey City Police, was assassinated by those 2 shooters shortly before they went into the kosher supermarket and started killing people. Why? He was checking on them, went to run their plate, and they assassinated them. And I talked about the vehicular ramming, New York City Hudson River bicycle path. The young man lived in New Milford. The average police response time here is 3 minutes or less. Plus, we also have armed security on premises, as I said. Every day it changes. We can keep up and up on this, but you know this can happen anywhere. So how do we respond? Run, hide, fight is the national standard. Run, we have little kids, we have people with dementia, some elderly people. Can everybody run? No, move fast, move fast. New York City calls it avoid, barricade, and confront. Now, if everybody tries to run to that door at one time, what happens? You're going to get stampede injuries. Nobody gets through. Remember, get out as fast as you can. Move as fast as you can. We'll talk about hide. We'll talk about fight. The bottom line is we want to save our lives, and we want to make sure we get law enforcement notified. So try to verify what type of emergency you're responding to before taking any action. If an emergency is ongoing, act immediately. Don't assume somebody else called PD. Make that call. When the perpetrator's goal is to harm people, a sergeant will tell you every second counts. Sarge, how long are most active shooter scenarios?
Less than a minute.
Over like that. Now, is it possible for us to be stationed at the front desk or maybe at the recreation desk and see somebody that comes in, you know, it's 140 degrees out in July, they have a fatigue jacket on, an overcoat, and a ski mask. Is that an indicator? Yeah, you want to let people know. You don't want to let people know. Definitely. A car's parked out there for too long, call the PD. Worst case scenario, they run the plate, they come check on the people. Time, distance, shielding, no matter what the threat is, limit your time in that threat zone. Put some distance and put some shielding. Be familiar with your exits. Always know where they are. I know there are exits back here too, correct, in the stage? Know where you are.
When we do lockdown training up here, and I know everyone's been through it, we're doing one prong of really what needs to be going on in everyone's head, especially those in here that are in charge of the little ones. If you can get out, I always tell people to get out, right? If you're in the athletic wing and you hear something's going on in the main office at the second floor and you can get out, get out. I cannot stress that enough. With the little ones, you know, if you're in the back and you can go out the back entrance, great. If you're in the front, you go out the front entrance, great. But really, it doesn't matter. And the thing, we could sit up here all day long and tell you, hey, do this, do that. But you need to be thinking about, hey, if something happens, how am I getting out of here? If something's happened that's not close by to where I am, how am I getting out of here? And how am I taking the people that I'm responsible for, whether it be the elderly, whether it be younger children, how am I taking them out of here, most importantly, right? So we could sit up here and tell you, yeah, do this, do that. If you're not thinking about it at least a little bit, then there's really nothing that we can do to help you. Because when we do lockdown drills, it's lockdown, right? It's lock the door, make sure you're out of hiding, blah, blah, blah. You're in the bathroom, wherever you may go. But the number one thing that you should be doing is getting away if you can. And it doesn't have to be, oh, well, I remember Sergeant Monty and Barry during the lockdown training or active shooter training, they told me I have to walk down the path and go to the Greek church. 100% that's not true. If we're evacuating the facility and it's an organized evacuation, yes, then that's where we're going to evacuate to. If there is something real bad going on here and someone's up in this main office and you're, like I said, in the athletic wing and you have to get out, I know where I'm going. I'm going out and I'm going out through the trees. That's where I'm going. I just know, like I know where I'm going, right? So if you're in that area or if you're in the back, okay, yeah, then maybe you're gonna take the kids and you're gonna go down that path and go and just keep going. You don't have to wait anywhere in particular, just go, right? My kids are in middle school now. From the time they were 5, I still remember it, they were in kindergarten and they did the same thing that, it's sad, right? As kindergartners, we're doing the same thing that we do with adults. But I remember talking to my 5-year-old at the time, she was brand new in kindergarten, and she said to me, oh yeah, they told us that we're supposed to hide if, you know, I forgot what they used for like little kids, if the postman comes or some nonsense they use for them. And I was like, honey, with all due respect, I love your teachers and I love the principal, but you see that door right there? That leads outside. If something happens, go out your door, go through that door and just keep running. And we'll find you eventually and you're not gonna get in trouble. That's just my thought process when something like this is gonna happen. If you can get out, get out.
So great, so that is a great information, great advice. Get away from the threat. Belongings, how many people here have their car key on them at all times? Not your purse, not your computer bag, your car key. Why would I want to have my car key on me? If I have to get out of here real fast, at least have my car key on me. Because I see so many people trying to evacuate in other emergencies. Oh, I have to go back in. My phone's in there, my car key's in there. Try and keep your car key on you. Evacuate safely. How many people here have a flashlight? Not your phone, but a small flashlight on them. Good to have. Harbor Freight, Walmart, they're real cheap, but this is like $5. A lot of people say, I have my light, I have my phone. Is a phone an illumination device or a communication device? What do you think? Right, communication. So have a small flashlight on you. It can help you. Evacuate safely. Don't worry about your belongings. You can always replace a computer, clothes, jacket. Get out. Report 911 when it's safe to do so. Let information flow freely if you can to the law enforcement. Hide, lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. Who can call a lockdown here? Anybody, correct? Anybody. The most junior employee, the most senior employee. That's important to remember that. It's sort of like yelling fire in a crowded place now. We don't joke around with that. I know somebody did that at an airport. Anybody go through TSA? They take that real serious, right? Got a little lax maybe after 9/11, but I know somebody, he's a young man, is my friend's son, who was, he did something stupid. He said in the airport, he said, I have a bomb. Oh yeah, I have a bomb, like that, joking around. Well, what do you think that prompted, right? It prompted a response by the Air Marshals, Port Authority, police, and the FBI to interview this guy. Now, he's on a list. Oh, I'm only joking. No, there's no joking here. When you say lockdown, that's for real. Lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. And we let people know where the threat is. Hide, barricade. So what do we do during a lockdown? The first employee able to get to a phone will use the public address and announce what? Lockdown, lockdown. PA system, dial 1610 under stress. Will that happen? I don't know. Everybody acts differently under stress. Cell phones, let people know. Sarge, you want information, right? They want to know. They want to get here as fast as possible. They're going to drive across lawns. They're going to run in. There'll be so many cops here, you won't even know. If this employee has a clearance saying what is happening, add to the announcement. Lockdown, lockdown, active shooter in the main entrance. We don't care if he or she knows we know they're there. It saves lives. We know where the threat is. Call 911 as soon as possible when it's safe, or the two-way radio. And activate the blue lights if you can do it safely, and the panic buttons when it's safe to do so. There's going to be a lot of chaos, a lot of screaming. The fire alarms, how noisy are they? You think a shooter would activate the fire alarm to do what? To enhance their killing capability? Absolutely. And the sergeant and I always often talk about this. Unless smoke or flames are an imminent threat to your safety or the kids you're watching, if you're teachers, you lock down if you can't get out. Does everybody agree with that? Why would an active shooter hit the fire alarm? It's a rote response, right? It's a rote response. And one of the things we see a lot throughout the country when there's active shooters and actual lockdowns, and it's probably just a drill. No, it's not a drill. Don't assume it's a drill, assume it's for real. Hide and barricade. Some of the things, this construction here, is Chris here, is this sheetrock? I'd say this eventually to say sheetrock, right? Little insulation, maybe a stud every 3 feet. Sarge, will that stop bullets?
No way.
What do you think? Anybody venture to say? Yeah. So when you barricade, just know where you are, right? If you have a concrete wall, in front, as your backstop, as your protection, that's different than sheetrock. Get yourself and as many other people in the nearest room and out of sight if you can't get out. Remember the magnets if you have to lock the door. If you're not familiar with it, before you leave today, man, before you end the tour today, please see somebody and they will show you how to do it, okay? What if we see people in the hallway, visitors, a lot of visitors here, right? This is a very unique facility. Not only is it an educational facility, also a recreational and cultural facility. So there are people that maybe their first day here and things went bad. Pull them in with you. Lock the doors, remove the magnets. How do you barricade a door? What do you think? What can we do? Chair, yeah. Exactly, those arms up there. Can we wrap duct tape around those arms up there? If we have time, sure. Barricade, delay. You want to delay the shooter from getting in. If you can physically lock the door, that's great. But you want to delay that shooter from getting into your room. Lower the blinds and turn the lights off if you can. And look for the safest corner. Now, a lot of schools, they have a safe corner. I don't know if we do it here, but they have blue painter's tape, if you've seen it, in the corner of the room where the least visibility is from outside the room. But with little kids, how hard is it to keep them quiet? Definitely. You can play the quiet game, so it's a challenge. The bottom line is barricade that door the best you can. If you're on the first floor, like the sergeant said, there's a back door here, a window, like in the daycare center, in the adult early education center. Can we put them right out? Yeah, keep going.
Does anybody work up front in early childhood in those classrooms? Just one? All right. Just something to think about if anyone is up there. We see it so often when we do lockdown drills. There's some classrooms, right? There's a shared bathroom in the middle of the classrooms. And for example, let's just say this classroom is occupied with children in it and this one is unoccupied. This classroom will do everything right. So they'll get all the kids into the center bathroom, the shared bathroom. They'll lock their door and this door will remain unlocked. And we walk in so often where we just open a door and it's wide open, it's not even locked. We walk in and everyone just crowded right in that center bathroom. And it gives me pause to even start thinking about Sandy Hook, because that's kind of what happened a little bit. Wasn't a shared space, they just forgot to lock the door and there was kids crowded into one room, and that's where he did most of his damage. So just keep that in the back of your mind, like, hey, if someone's not in that classroom, it really probably should be something that's worked on as policy, where like if you're not in your classroom, to keep that door locked. This way you only have to worry about your side of the room. But if it doesn't, then just keep that in mind, all right?
Thank you, Sarge. Compact mirrors. I know Harmon ran out of business. I used to love Harmon Drugs. It was great for building up my preparedness kit. But how good is this mirror if you had to look around the corner? Got this? Anybody have? Yeah, it works, right? It works. It does reflect light, but you can look around the corner if you had to. See if you have that with you, with your flashlight, with your whistle. All inexpensive. We talked about look for the safest corner where the shooter cannot see you or he or she looks in the door. Keep quiet. Put your cell phones on vibrate and lower the volume. Most active shooters bypass deterrence, close, lock, or barricade doors. They want to go find people because they know their time on this earth is short, because law enforcement is on the way. Real critical, stay in safe areas until directed by law enforcement to move or evacuate. Good rule of thumb is if law enforcement's coming this way, I go that way. Why? Chances are the area they're coming from is safe. Once again, never open doors during a lockdown. What if your best friend's out there knocking on the door and there's a real active shooter scenario going on in the facility and you're in a lockdown? What do? Somebody's banging on the door, let me in, let me in. No, you have to maintain that discipline, right, Sarge? We don't know if that person's been compromised. And once again, in the event of a fire alarm, stay where you are unless smoke or fire are an imminent threat. If fire alarm goes off during a lockdown, we talked about this, remain where you are unless smoke or fire is an imminent threat to you. One of the things we saw in the the Crocus City Hall concert arena that just took place, they use fire as a weapon now. ISIS-K had 4 personnel, 4 shooters, 3 shooters and 1 person dedicated to doing what? Lighting the exits on fire with accelerant. Insane, right? So remember, know where you are. Know where you are. For further directives, law enforcement officers and administrators will have keys. Don't open the door for me. You want to wait for security, for law enforcement. Sergeant will tell you, at Sandy Hook, one teacher only waited until they saw a uniformed Connecticut State Trooper. And when she came, they opened the door. Remember, and this is important, it's not going to be announced all clear by Mr. Rogers, by anybody else, by Chris, by Allison. There's a real active shooter event here in a lockdown. Who's the only person that can open that door? Law enforcement. And that's important. Sarge, how long would it take to clear a building like this? And how many law enforcement, an estimate?
Hours.
Yeah, it's gonna take time.
Hours.
Active shooter scenario, because just because you think there's one shooter, there may be more.
And depending on where you are in the building, right, depending on how, right, because let's just say there was, right, there's an active shooter, the threat is eliminated, and then we have to go and now release every room. So depending on how the systematic clear then starts, and depending on where you are in the building, it may be hours that you're sitting in lockdown. So just keep that in mind. Going back to a few of the things that Barry talked about that just kind of rang in my head, about the blinds, about lowering the blinds. It's not really a thing that we stress anymore. The cell phone thing, that was another thing that we changed over the years when we first started doing this. It used to be turn your cell phones off. That was the thing, turn your cell phones off, right? And then it was like, hold on a minute. We all do, right? We all have mini computers in our pockets at this point. For this phone to turn back on, I could be missing some critical information. I could be passing off to law enforcement or somebody else because they take so long now because it's a mini computer. So leave the cell phone on. I know for myself, I have emergency contacts that can ring through no matter what, as I'm sure you all do, even if your phone's on silent. I can guarantee you, without a doubt, if I was somewhere at the most inopportune time, my wife is going to call my cell phone. 100% is going to happen, and she's going to be ringing through on my cell phone. And I'm sure it's going to happen to someone else, in one of these situations. But leave them on. It's our best source of information. So we don't turn our cell phones off anymore.
Thank you, Sarge. Remember, so the blinds, insignificant. That's great information. What if you're outside, active shooter outside the building? One of my biggest concerns when I used to do security here was they had exercise classes on the tennis courts and they had kids by the pool. If somebody wants to set up a sniper's nest in those woods or just come out and start shooting, how vulnerable are you? So I always used to like to do a 360. So so if you do take classes outside, make sure you get into that building quick. Make sure there's a door open to get back in that building. That's something I always used to talk to Orrin about. Like there's a big vulnerability out there when there's classes outside. Make sure we can get them back in if we need to. Or they can run. They can get into the woods. If an attack is occurring outside the building, activate the lockdown procedures immediately. Try to assess the situation and act accordingly. Where is the threat? Now, if I'm outside in the playground with about 15 kids and the shooter is over by the pool, can I take those kids just run into the woods? What do you think? Yeah, you'll hit 9W sooner or later. You'll get help. But you're getting away from the threat. That's critical. You got to get away from the threat. Okay, so there's no steadfast answers. We said that the Greek church is the primary evacuation point. Sure, an orderly evacuation, that's where we're going to go. But game's off, man. There are no rules. When things go real bad, you take off. Sort of like pre-9/11, they used to tell everybody, don't worry, stay in the building. It's a high-rise. I go to this FDNY Fire Director Association meeting once a year. You know that nobody will stay in a building anymore, even if it's a fire alarm. Nobody will stay in a high-rise in New York City. First thing that people say is, I'm out of here. I'm gone. I'm taking the stairs. That's not a bad thing. It saves lives. So like the sergeant said, get away from that threat. Is the information accurate? Is it safer to flee or increase the distance? Depends where the threat is. Go back inside if you can safely. Remember, time distance shielding, if you can safely. Fight, be a hard target. Gavin DeBecker talks about a woman who picked up her 5-year-old child in Los Angeles from daycare. And a little bit about child predators. Most of your stranger abductions, Sergeant will tell you, are very rare, like 2% of the nation. But you do get stranger abductions for children that are rare, that are strangers. There's no familial connection, no non-custodial parent or grandparent. So anyway, she has her child, and he tells her story on one of his podcasts. And she's taking the child to the car, and this guy tries to grab her child. He's that 2% stranger predator. What does she do? She takes her key and puts it in his eye and hits his optical nerve. That's what you have to do. Saved her child's life and her life. That's what you got to get into that mindset to stay alive, to fight. How many people here have used a fire extinguisher? Real simple acronym. Pull, aim, squeeze, sweep. You take the fire extinguisher off the holder on the wall. You pull the pin. You aim the nozzle. You squeeze it and sweep. Hit somebody in the face with that, right, Sarge? Does it work?
Yeah.
And it can also be used as a blunt weapon. There's a lot of people power here. You can make a plan and attack somebody. And why do I say that? How many people here see some of the videos of these idiots that act up on airplanes lately? You ever see that? They push the flag. You know, by the way, that's a federal crime. $10,000 fine, and you're doing at least 2 years in federal prison to interfere with a flight crew. But you've seen it. How many people jump up now in a plane to help? Have you seen it? Everybody does. That's the same thing you're going to have here. You got a lot of people power. Prepare for a worst case scenario where the perpetrator is entering a room where you're barricaded, and the only option is to fight. Try to disrupt the intruder by using an improvised weapon. Chairs, scissors, pens, targets. I don't care how well trained somebody is, everybody has a startle flinch response with your eyes. I don't care what type of training they have. Everybody has vulnerabilities. And act as aggressively as possible. I know the county SWAT team has a mantra: if you can't stay safe, stay dangerous. And if we can show that video now, Allison, and then we'll get back into the curriculum. The FBI put this new, you see this one, Sarge? The FBI took this, they changed the active shooter video that originally came out from Texas about 10 years ago, and they put this one together. It's really good.
Hi, can I get you started with drinks?
Oh, sorry, I gotta take this.
We'll need a minute.
Seriously, no, I'm here. You hear me? Sorry.
Now you need to back up. You can't be here anymore. Get out of my face, what, man. You think I'm afraid of you? Get off, man!
911, there's a clip.
Running makes you harder to hit and improves your chances of survival. Don't go up here.
Police, where is he?
By the bar, blue jeans, black shirt. Empty hands up, follow their instructions.
I'm in the direct line of fire if I head for either exit, but I have other options to help me survive. Guys, come on, in here. Come on. Go, go, go. Lock and barricade the door.
Both my exits are blocked by the shooter. I gotta stay hidden. I'm no victim. I'm ready for this.
He's applying direct pressure to the wound to stop the bleeding until we can find a tourniquet. In the meantime, turn off your phones and make a plan to defend yourself.
We have to fight to survive. If you control the weapon, you control the shooter. I'll go for the gun. He'll go for his arms. The bartender will go for the head.
Where is he?
We got him right here. Stay down.
Please, show me your hand!
Over here.
You can survive a mass shooting.
if you're prepared. Remember, run, hide, or fight. Run. Wherever you go, be aware of alternate exits. Quickly and cautiously evacuate in a direction away from the attacker. Don't hesitate. Seconds matter. Remember windows and emergency exits. Leave belongings behind. Keep your empty hands raised and clearly visible when exiting a building. Follow all instructions from the police. Don't stop until you're sure you've reached a safe location. Hide. If there is no safe escape route, find a good hiding place. Lock and barricade the door. Silence cell phones. Prepare a defense plan. Fight. Fight only as a last resort. Use available objects as improvised weapons. Use teamwork and surprise. A coordinated ambush can incapacitate an attacker. You're fighting for your life. Don't fight fair. Stop the bleed. A victim can die of uncontrolled blood loss in 5 minutes or less. Apply pressure or a tourniquet to control severe bleeding. Go to fbi.gov/survive to learn more.
Okay, we talked about what can a bomb look like, once again? Look like anything. Do not touch, be suspicious of any items, packages, bags, etc. It's common to see backpacks here, the gym bags. Left unattended inside or outside the building. Notify security officer and attempt to find the owner without touching the suspicious item. If you're unable to quickly locate the owner, act as follows. Immediately dial 911. Remember to give an accurate description, location of the suspicious item. Once again, do not touch or move the item or device, right? Does everybody agree with that? Do not touch it. Keep a minimum 150-foot distance from the item and prevent from other people to get near the item. So you may have to evacuate the facility if you see a suspicious package or device. Do not use the radio or cell phone within 50 feet of item or device. And stay tuned and follow instruction given by security and law enforcement. Once again, let security know as soon as possible for any emergencies. Bomb threats, 2 types. All threats should be evaluated carefully. Specific threat, detailed information, location of device and description. One of the things a lot of military personnel would tell us is they're going to blow you up, they're not going to tell you. Does everybody agree with that? Somebody's going to blow you up, they're not going to tell you. Time of detonation, target. Remember, most bomb threats are meant to do what? Instill fear, disrupt operations, harass. Non-specific, lacks credibility, disrupt operations, instills fear. A series of others sent regionally. Do we always want to evacuate? No, Sarge brought up a good point earlier. You could be a target outside. Let's call a bomb threat in, and let's get people outside. There was a shooting in Jonesboro, Arkansas in the 90s. And young man, 14-year-old, pulls the fire alarm, starts shooting his classmates as they exit the building, and his teachers. So remember, take those 3 seconds, make good decisions. Once again, we talked about if you do get a bomb threat, do not hang up. Save the email, print it out, Sarge, right? Is something we want to do?
Yes.
Evidence. Most of these people are megalomaniacs, egomaniacs. They want to, they want to get caught. They think they can't. Remain calm. Have somebody be your phone buddy with you. Write down notes to them. I'm calling police. Keep the caller on the line as long as possible. Refer to that bomb threat checklist and prolong the conversation. Try to motion to another person. A lot of times it's somebody you know, if it's not one of these robocalls. That's what the sheet looks like. It's good to keep next to the phone. Why? We don't have to remember all this. We get that bomb threat over the phone, a telephonic bomb threat, we have it. The description of the caller's voice, accent, etc. Length of conversation. And date and time as well. I believe these are also in the facility, the ones from Homeland Security, the one Sarge referenced as well. Any questions? Thank you, everybody. Have a great, great summer. Stay safe. Sarge, any closing remarks?
Nope. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.